Hi, this is John Pettigrew, and you're listening to Talking Through My Hat, a podcast that explores bookish businesses, the fantastic people who create them, and what those people have learned. I'm a hat wearer, a recovering editor, and the creator of Futureproofs, enabling editors and authors to work better online. To find out more, visit wearefutureproofs.com or follow me on Twitter at John_Pettigrew. Welcome to Talking Through My Hat. Today I'm talking with Bec Evans, co-founder of Prolifiko, a digital coach for writers that uses AI, persuasive technology and neuroscience to help people start writing, finish their project and smash their writing goals. She's had a long history in publishing and elsewhere and is also a writer herself. So welcome to Talking Through My Hat, Bec.
Thank you for asking me.
Absolute pleasure. So you've done, as I say, lots of things. And before you started Prolifiko, you were in an apparently safe corporate job at Emerald. Why did you start your own business? I know you kind of ran Prolifiko kind of along as a side project for a while. So where did that come from?
I basically came across a problem that I was determined to solve. And I think often when you stumble across ideas, you have to kind of fit them in around your life. So having a side hustle is sort of a safe bet. But it got to such a stage where I had to kind of go all in, quit my job and commit fully to Prolifiko. And that's what I've been doing for the last year.
Yeah. So what drove that decision to ditch the day job and actually say this mad idea is actually something I have to do?
Well, I've been working on it and doing research and then bringing on board my co-founder, Chris Smith. We got to a stage where we were getting the traction. We were getting lots of users and realizing that there was really something in this and that it had the potential to be a business. And I think it's great having side projects and side hustles, but you get to a stage where you physically can't do everything all at the same time. Yeah. So it was, and making that commitment really helps grow a business as well.
Well, you know, as you're saying, it was taking off and you're getting lots of people using it. What do you actually do? What does Prolifiko do for those people? Who signs up for it? And why do they come back?
Yes. So as you said, Prolifiko is a digital coach for writing. And one way to think of it is a bit like sort of Fitbit for writers. And what it does is it uses persuasive technology to help people get started with their writing projects and basically finish them, because as we all know, ideas are the easy bit. The really hard stuff of writing a book or anything that's long form is getting it finished. Yeah. And we kind of think of ourselves as operating in a similar space to Grammarly, because it's around that productivity, but we're all about the habit side of things. And it coaches people and helps them learn and improve their own writing practice and find time within the busyness of their lives. And in terms of writers, I came up with the idea when I ran a writers' centre. So I was working for Arvon, managing Lumbank, which was Ted Hughes' old house. It's this beautiful house and grounds up in Yorkshire. And over the years, you'd have hundreds, if not thousands of people would come on writing courses. And then each year you'd find some of them would come back again and you'd ask them, oh, how's the book going? They go, oh, I haven't written a word since I was here. And you see that people really do struggle, that writing retreats are amazing and they get people going, but they have to make it work within their own lives. And that just got me thinking about how could we use technology to help? I was, using my Fitbit all the time and my smartphone. I just thought, would this kind of technology work in a creative environment? And I think you asked about what sort of writers. So to start with, they were much more creative writers, novelists, script writers, and there was a portion of kind of non-fiction, sort of some academics and journalists. But what we've found over the last year is that academics and scholars in particular have a real problem around finding time to write, because it's so important for their jobs.
Yeah, I suppose academics, it's quite a different thing. A novelist wants to write a book. An academic has to publish. Is that publish or perish environment?
Absolutely. I mean, publish or perish is a real kind of it's almost like a cliche within sort of academic publishing, which is what some of my background was. But what we've found is working with academics is that's how they get judged. They get judged on their publishing performance. Yet their job is to teach and to do admin and to do meetings and go to conferences. And there's no time allowed for them to hit those kind of publishing targets. And we asked academics, we're running a survey at the moment, if they felt under pressure to write, and 85% of them said they were under pressure to write. But the follow-up question was whether or not that pressure was internal from their own kind of motivation or external from their supervisors or their universities. And actually, most of them, 65%, felt it was internal. So they're kind of building this publish or perish within their own motivation, really.
Yeah. I suppose it kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it? Because as an academic, the stuff you want to do, not the admin and lecturing to one side, it is your research. And if you're doing good research that interests and excites you, you want to create something, to want to report it, to analyse it, to tell people about it.
Completely. And that's what they feel success is. It's sharing their research with the world, with their peers, and, fundamentally making a difference, because so much of this research, it's really important stuff that's furthering sort of science and knowledge, and you want to get it out there.
Do you have many sort of PhD students trying to write theses as well? Because again, that's very time pressured. Or is it more of the kind of paper writing?
It's a real mix, and that's what we're looking into at the moment. So as I said, your audience changes when you put a product out in the world. It's again like it's putting a book in the world. You don't know quite who's going to read it, who's going to use your product. So you start to work very closely with the people who are using your product and finding out more about them. And yes, you're absolutely right. We're finding more and more PhD and thesis writers are coming to us at the moment.
So you've got the writers coming to you. You're kind of coaching them and supporting them. What do you actually do? Because obviously many of us, I don't actually have a Fitbit, but I've seen them in action. And then we've all kind of familiar with all the ways that technology is trying to gamify our lives and stuff. What are the kind of, you talk about how you use AI and neuroscience and stuff. What do you actually do in terms of the author, and then kind of some broadly kind of behind the scenes to actually tie that together? What do you give the people who are actually using Prolifiko?
Yeah, in a very simple way, just think of it like a coach. So it helps people formulate what their writing goal is, and that could be absolutely anything they need to write. And then it breaks it down into small steps. So it's very grounded in psychology of behavior change. So it's about helping people break down their big tasks into small achievable steps, and then just literally track against it, and then log how it went, and then set another step. So it takes this small steps process, which is, as I said, very grounded in research and psychology. And people start to feel they're making progress, which again has that positive benefit. They feel more motivated, and then they keep going. And it's as simple as that, really. And it just uses technology, just a responsive website that people can use on their desktop or their mobile, whatever they write. And the whole idea is it doesn't distract from the writing. It takes seconds to just go in, log, and then they get their data back so they can review how it went. And that's what it's all about, is about learning from your own practice and how you find the time and how it went. So it's not AI in the sense of replacing what people do. I think what makes us human is that creativity and the ability to write and communicate. So what we're trying to do, you call it kind of human in the loop. So it helps people understand and learn from their own practice.
Yeah, that's great. So you came to running that business quite a lot of experience in different things and commercial experience. Did you find it a very different experience running a little startup and kind of scrapping away or whatever? And did you find you had to go out and learn lots of new stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, in many ways, Prolifiko is kind of considered a startup rather than a small business. And that's a very strange concept to get your head around, particularly if you have been working within businesses for, 10, 20 years. And I had to learn so much. And it's very much within a career, I kind of think that success is about specialization. You get really good at something and you move up the hierarchy. And running a startup or a small business is about being a generalist. So you're actually almost like you go from being an expert to being an idiot in most of the things you do, and you still have to do them all because they're all essential. So you learn a lot about being humble and about taking advice from people. And that was very strange because, again, within a business, you're often the one, I would be the one that mentored. I was the one who was the manager. I would tell people what to do. Whereas now I spend my time asking people what to do, getting feedback on things, and and just learning, constantly learning.
So where do you go for that? Do you devour business books? Are you always talking to advisors, or is it the web? Where do you go to get some of that stuff?
As I try to get as much as possible, but at the moment we're just on a startup accelerator called Ignite. They're sort of one of the largest in Europe. So they're a specialist technology accelerator, and they have a whole network of advisors. So you have a kind of, like, they call it like a startup MBA, where you have formal sessions, but you have lots of informal networking and mentoring sessions. So we would go to an offsite, and literally you might meet 5, 10, 15 mentors in a day, and they would all give you different advice on your business about what you should do next. And your skill is kind of filtering that. So it's a lot around being around people. I learn a huge amount from the people who use the product. So I spend a lot of time doing user interviews, user testing, running surveys, and figuring out what they need and want. But yes, I love reading. I mean, my background's publishing, so I read books whenever I can. I read a lot of business books. I read a lot of business blogs, and sort of technology and business magazines as well.
So when you're thinking about kind of taking that stuff you're learning and kind of putting it into practice, you're thinking about, maybe the next 5 months of the business, the next 5 years of the business. What sort of stuff are you thinking about? Obviously the short scale is one thing. That's where you can go, what does the product need to do next week, kind of stuff. But when you're thinking about 5 years or 50 years, what are the things that you're thinking about to make sure the business is kind of still around then?
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the scary things about running your own business, in that the decisions you make now have a really big impact in the future. And you don't really know how important they're going to be. The way I always think of it, so when I was working in publishing, I worked in innovation. And what you do is you kind of find problems and then generate solutions to them. And it's very much that you have to fall in love with that problem and not that solution. So I know that Prolifiko will change, and it has changed. The users have changed over time as we've gone. We still have a lot of creative writers and novelists, but going much more towards the sort of academics and scholars. But also that means that the things that they want and need will change. And then that sort of informs your product roadmap over, as you said, the short term. But the long term is, what is the problem we're solving? Is it just people finishing their writing projects, or is it this kind of bigger issue around things like, the busyness and distraction and procrastination? Are those the real problems that we're looking at? And I have a feeling with the way technology and modern life and acceleration is, those problems are going to be around for about 50 years.
And human nature doesn't change, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But technology is making it harder for people to concentrate and do deep work, which is what writing is.
So there's, as you say, a clear but evolving idea of what the product's about. I mean, this, in a sense, is what I find certainly one of the differences between, as you say, working in a big business in innovation or whatever, and working in a startup, that you can only do one big thing at a time in a startup. Did you find that, is that a liberating thing for you? Is it a frustrating thing?
It's very exciting. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt as excited and fulfilled as running my own business now. It's definitely the best thing ever. And there's no way you can prepare for it apart from just doing it. So even when I was doing it sort of part-time and on the side, I thought I was all in, oh, look at me, I'm a startup founder. But I wasn't until, you are living it every minute of every single day. So it is very, very exciting and quite liberating. But it's so scary. I mean, there's nothing, running your own business where you are responsible and you have people working for you. I mean, we mainly use freelancers, but, we've got to get people paid. You've got to make sure that you do hit your product milestones. Everything takes longer than you think it will. And technology is, I'm a non-tech founder, which is unusual in the sort of startup world. I think it's becoming much more common. But I have to rely on a lot of other people to make stuff happen. And sometimes that's completely out of your control. So you learn a lot about control. Whereas in a business, if you wanted something to happen, you just made it happen. And if you needed more money, you put a business case together and got the money to make products and projects complete.
And how big is the team you've got? I say you've got you've got you and Chris, your co-founders. Is that kind of the full-time business? Then you're using freelancers around that, and what sort of stuff are you outsourcing versus keeping in? Are you doing your own? I don't know. Is Chris doing your coding, or do you outsource that? So
we're both non-tech. Uh-huh. So all of our sort of freelancers and the people working for us are on the technology side. Okay. So we have a kind of consulting CTO, and then we have sometimes you might have up to between 2 or 6 developers working at any one time across the full range of design, UX, sort of front end, back end, classic development, coding.
I guess it actually, in terms of finding the team, the first question is, where did you find Chris? I said you had to go out and find your co-founder. Yeah. So where do you find all these people? Where do you find a co-founder? Where do you find board? And where do you find the freelancers?
Yeah. So in terms of, I've known Chris for a very, very long time. So it was actually, he was working on the business more and more as I was running it. So it was a fairly no-brainer to bring him on as co-founder. It happened very quickly. So it's very much the whole business is completely split between us. Uh-huh. In terms of other people, it's that classic around networking, but it's a lot more subtle than you think. You'd be surprised how many people you know who know other people, who there are in your local town. When you start looking, people sort of appear as well. But having formal structures like startup accelerators, there's a lot of events. I live between Leeds and Manchester. There's a lot of stuff going on there. You start to tap into networks when you become interested in something. And I found a lot of online networks were really helpful for me. So there was one for women in technology called Ada's List. Mm-hmm. And it was absolutely essential when I first had this idea. And I was like, where on earth do I start with this thing? And you just post stuff and people come to help. And I got my first tech mentor through Ada's List, and she's been helping me for years, and I still throw her off questions, even though I have got more formal structures now. That those people come along with you.
Having people, and this is, as you say, it's another one of those differences between running a startup and working in a big business, is that it's all down to you. There isn't this team you can fall back on, so you have to find it. You have to find people to tell you when you're a bit mad, and to help you when you're not mad, and push you in the right direction and help you find those roads.
Absolutely. And I think that's going back to the learnings. It's all about talking to people. So talking to people who use your product and talking to experts and people around you. Yeah. And the skill is filtering that feedback. So you have this kind of, it's a combination of information overload and then kind of recency bias that you often to go, the last thing you heard is, oh, that's amazing. We've got to do that now. I'm going to change the business. Yeah. But I find you've got to sort of sit with the feedback that you've got and sit with what people have told you, and then the best stuff always sticks.
Yeah, I think I was saying earlier, you go to a day where you've got 10 or 15 people all giving you conflicting advice. You can't do all of it.
And building that spirit of experimentation. So if you take a piece of advice, you figure out what that might look like in reality. Yeah. And, you can be as formal as go, right, well, we're just going to run an experiment on that. We're just, whether it's a prototyping one or a piece of more general business advice. It's like, so what does this look like? How can we test it? Yeah. And then that's how you learn. So I think, particularly in technology, you have to run experiments, you have to track results, you have to gather data of all kinds and learn from it. That's the only way you're going to improve and figure out what's right. And just because somebody's got a deep personal experience and some very wise advice on something, it might not work for your business, but sometimes you can dismiss it out of hand, but actually it's worth trying, figuring out what the risks are and, seeing how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get advice from all sorts of places, and ideally that's kind of, helping us find our blind spots and shore up some of that stuff. What are the things that you find hardest about running a business? The bits that, aren't natural to you or whatever. And I guess the stuff you find hardest that you can't shuffle off to somebody else. You still have to do it.
Yeah. So I think it goes back to that, as I said before, like success in a business is being an expert and being a specialist, and running your own business, it's like being a bit of an idiot most of the time. But I find that it's the things that stay on your to-do list. If you know you're hiding from them, they're the things that you need to do. Yeah. So often they confront you. So you're avoiding some difficult stuff. And we all have skills and preferences. And actually you can't just rely on what you like doing and what you do the best. you have to face up to those difficult tasks and those the ones you despise doing. So whether it could be, I don't know, doing your finances, your accounting, looking at data, some really tough stuff. We'll all have those. So understanding our bias.
Is it the numbers for you then? Whether it's finance or data that you find hardest, or is it trying to find suppliers, or
I think the suppliers is that side is fine. I think I'm dreadful on email generally, and it's just what I try to do is I am a bit of a productivity freak, so I do think quite a lot about how I structure my time and how I give myself time to do the work that really kind of moves the needle on the business. And I find that there's a lot of things around admin. You can spend a day frittering away, checking this and doing finances and looking at data and clearing inboxes. And those tasks will never go away. So you're better off scheduling them and sticking them within certain amounts of a day or a time of the week, and then giving yourself time to do some of that really deep work, which could be, plowing through user interviews to figure out what's going on there, looking at the UX of a product. So I think the hardest thing is prioritizing and saying no.
Saying no is always a hard thing. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've obviously had to think quite deeply about how you go about stuff and how you personally go about stuff. What have you learned about yourself from kind of running this business?
I understand myself a huge amount more, actually. And I think one of the main things was around my own levels of risk. So again, if you go from being in a career, it's very easy to see where you can go. You can change jobs, you can jump around a little bit, but you have a certain level of security. But actually taking a risk and doing something for yourself is very, very scary. But actually once you've done it, it isn't at all scary looking back on it. So I think that would be the biggest learning that I've had.
I find risk quite interesting because people often assume that those of us who are mad enough to start a business, to launch a startup, must be really risky people. They love risk. I'm a really risk-averse person. Most of the people I've talked to, actually, they're quite considered. And it's not this bonkers leap in without looking, but you've got to understand risk and manage it.
Yes, and you understand it within your own life. And I think there's this kind of idea of that startup founders are often straight out of university, and they have a very different concept of risk, but they do have huge amount of debt. Whereas if you're older, you actually do have more security, but the risk might seem more destabilizing, that level of change. But actually it's less risk for someone who's had a bit of a career to start a business, because actually you can go back. What's the worst that can happen? Go back and get a job again. It's like, well, we've done that already.
And we've learned some of the skills hopefully we'll need to actually run that business.
Yes,
hopefully.
Definitely.
Anyway, sorry, perception of risk was one of your things you've learned about yourself. Do you have any other things that you've discovered?
I think it goes back to that feedback and being open to new ideas, being open to change, having sort of cultivating a growth mindset. That you are going to learn so much from starting a business. It's often going to go quite badly, but it's also going to go really, really well. And managing your emotions and understanding how you feel and what's within your control. I think a lot of it is psychological, and you only learn from doing that.
Yeah, it's compared to working in corporate in for somebody, or just for somebody else. The highs are much higher and the lows are much lower when you're doing it yourself, aren't they?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, given that, why do you keep doing it? What is it that keeps you coming back up to your desk every day, going, I must do this?
It's going back to that problem. I am so intrigued by what stops people achieving their goals, their writing dreams. And it's really about falling in love with that problem and not your solution. So as I said, I know Prolifiko will change, and I can't imagine how it's going to change over the next few years, but that problem is still there, and until it's still there, I'm going to keep coming back to my desk to tackle it.
Brilliant. Well, there's been some great stuff. That's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks very much for your time, Bec.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks again to Bec for that conversation. It's always fantastic to talk about somebody who's found a problem that they are just determined to solve and get to grips with. And the way she focuses on what makes us human as the core of that, the need to write, to create, to communicate with the people around us. I do love the things you picked up on as well, that this difference between working for a company, a corporation, and in a startup is that you have to move from being a specialist to being a generalist, to knowing almost nothing about most of what you do day to day. And I know I can empathise with that, and it's that personal challenge to have to get to grips with all these new things. It's great. And having to change, as you said, from being the person who gives advice to being somebody who has to go and get advice from all different people around you. Also, that thing she said, she started Prolifiko as a side hustle, but you said, you're not a startup founder until you're doing it all day, every day. That side hustle is a great way to start, but if you're going to commit to it, you've got to commit to it. Thank you, Bec, for that conversation. I hope you all listening to it found that really useful and interesting. Next week, I'm talking to Justo Hidalgo, co-founder of 24 Symbols, the ebook subscription platform. So if you want to hear about that, please come back then. If you want to get notifications whenever new episodes are published, or to get our weekly newsletter with bite-sized snippets about what's going on in and around the publishing industry, you can do that from our website, myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. Hopefully I'll see you again next week. This was Talking Through My Hat, a podcast by John Pettigrew, founder of We Are Future Proofs. Please let me know your thoughts by leaving a review at Apple Podcasts or by commenting on the website, myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. You can subscribe to this channel at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is from hooksounds.com.